Hello and welcome to this bonus edition of the Media Club. The UK media regulator Ofcom has been becoming more vocal in the past year from interventions in commercial radio and the thorny issue of what constitutes a news programme. And today Ofcom is pushing YouTube and others to feature public service content more prominently. Cristina Nicolotti Squires is the Group Director for Broadcasting and Media at Ofcom and joins me now. Cristina, welcome to the Media Club.
Thank you very much. Nice and cosy in here.
It is, it's lovely. Before we get into what Ofcom are sort of recommending today, what sort of prompted the report? Why does it exist?
It's something we actually have to do every 5 years. And in fact, 5 years ago, we did one called Small Screen Big Debate, and it informed the Media Act, which we're currently implementing. So it is something that we're required to do as part of our job. But actually, you know what? Things are changing so much, so fast, that not reviewing how public service broadcasting and media is going would be remiss of us. So something we have to do, but actually something we need to do, really.
Okay, so there's quite a few sort of proposals here. One that's probably captures lots of people's imagination is around YouTube, and thinking about it. When I was looking at the summary, thinking a lot about almost treating YouTube like a traditional broadcast outlet, like a Sky or a cable. And you want them to have kind of public service media on there. Why YouTube and why now?
If you think about prominence, is the word we use about how you can find this stuff, public service content. It's a sort of logical conclusion. The regulation of prominence was originally the 3, then became 4, then became 5 buttons on your television. Then where it was in the EPG. With the Media Act, it's about, where it is, how it appears on smart TVs. We've got 7 out of 10, I think, homes have got smart tellies these days. And so this is kind of like a logical development of that. And YouTube, it's a growing platform. And we're telling people, the broadcasters, put your content where the audiences are. And they're increasingly on YouTube. So it kind of makes sense.
Obviously, an American company, internet-driven firm. How do you think they'll feel about being sort of put into the Premier League and into your sites?
We've already had a few conversations, actually. In fact, we've had some conversations with the broadcasters and with YouTube, and actually people are generally in the same place. The stuff that the public service media that we talk about it's news, it's current affairs, it's sports, it's children's programs, it's great dramas, it's stuff that brings people together. And they all have really good, strong brands. So actually, why would YouTube not want to put those things on there? And they do, and they've got some good. They're developing some really good relationships, the broadcasters. So I think it's kind of beneficial for everyone, really.
I mean, ITV obviously have announced they're putting a lot more full episodes on there. Channel 4 and Channel 4.0 are doing quite a bit on YouTube. When we think about what public service media is, does that mean mandating that someone that's got an Ofcom license should get prominence, or could it be other people that create public media? Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of, how many people can you prominate? That's not a word, is it? How many people? If you have prominence for everybody, how can you do that? So we're starting off with the public service broadcasters. They have to make a certain kind of content. Now, public service media is not just made by BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5. Sky makes great stuff. Netflix is making, adolescents, etc. There's a big difference. Those companies don't have to. In fact, I think Sky announced the other day that they're going to stop doing original kids stuff.
Commissioning kids content for Sky Kids.
So, that's for them to decide to do. But the public service broadcasters have to make this stuff, and so that's kind of the difference, really, I suppose. And
obviously, historically, they had to make that stuff to get access to Spectrum. To get on to that button number 3, 4 or 5. And that was the exchange. You got access to Spectrum in exchange for maybe doing some stuff that
good stuff
you maybe wouldn't do on your own. But that sort of exchange has changed. You don't necessarily need to have a button. You can appear on an EPG as a commercial provider. Is some of this prominence on encouraging prominence on YouTube ways to keep ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 in the public service family?
Matt, you're absolutely right. I mean, the pact has changed, hasn't it? As you said, there was a trade-off. So what can the trade-offs be in a world where there's so many different channels and so many different choices? And yeah, this is prominence of public service broadcasting is part of that trade-off. And again, it's the latest sort of iteration of it. So yeah, absolutely, it is part of that. As I said, they have to make those kinds of programmes. Lots of other people do, but they don't have to.
And obviously then there's the question of who pays for these things, and that's one of the things that is raised in the report. And there's obviously a strong encouragement that there's government funding for some of this, maybe outside of what the licence fee does.
Yeah, look, luckily Ofcom doesn't have to decide how this is done.
Yes.
It's up to the government how things are funded. We've seen that, tax relief for high-end TV productions really helped. There have been calls from various stakeholders for other things. I think the government ruled out, didn't they, a tax on the streaming companies. How the BBC is funded, obviously, is the biggest one. But, all the other PSBs tell us it's not in their interest that they do a badly funded BBC.
And they don't necessarily want the BBC to compete for ad revenue from them or even maybe subscription revenue.
No, I'm sure they don't. So, yeah, how things are funded. And look, let's accept it. There isn't a lot of money sloshing around, is there? So I think it's about sort of some smart thinking. And at the end of the day, yeah, it's down to the government to work out how that code should be done. But it's not just about finding money; it's about how you spend the money as well, I think.
And those things we mentioned them earlier. So I guess kind of news, children's content, things that maybe the market wouldn't choose.
Yeah,
to
I mean,
provide.
news has never been a commercial thing. ITV news. Costs money to make, and was kind of cross-subsidised, I suppose, if you like, by likes of Coronation Street or other sort of more popular programmes. But it's it is an area that I don't think the market would necessarily subscribe. I mean, Sky has a very slight vested interest. I came from there after 8 years. Sky does a fantastic news service. Doesn't have to. Chose to. So there's a value. There is a kind of a kind of inherent value of news.
And some of that's because that was to get deals to happen.
Well, it's good for the brand.
Yes.
It's really good for a brand that you provide. Pay us money to watch football, but also we do lots of other good things as well. So yeah, Sky News is a fantastic product, but again, it doesn't have to exist. And Sky could turn around and go, "We're not going to do it anymore." Don't think they will, but they could do. So it's and news is an expensive business. Sending people to the countless wars that are always happening around the world is not cheap, and eyewitness journalism is really crucial. And now we're in an era where, because there's kind of fake news and misinformation around, it's actually, having news desks that have got people to verify stuff is now become, part of what you have to do all the time.
I guess from a consumer perspective, and there's a lot of research that Ofcom does about consumers that's got to be high quality and covers all the different media. I do worry you see a lot of response to the licence fee, and now the public don't need to have a licence fee to consume television if they don't watch live television or don't use the iPlayer. And you can see online that people are unhappy that they're forced to pay a licence fee. I mean, do they want the government to invest in media or spend more of their money on media? A lot of people say actually the market should just look after itself.
We haven't done specific research on that. I think it's important to realise that a lot of people still use the BBC.
Yeah.
Something like 70% of people, isn't it? I think, use the BBC at some point. So it's still really used. But yes, trying to persuade people to pay the licence fee is an ongoing thing. But I think with these things is that if we, as a society, as Britain, if we don't fund things like the BBC and public service broadcasting properly, then, we'll wake up one day and it'll be gone. It's like those things, you don't miss it till it's gone. And it, the BBC and the other broadcasters, they cover such a range of stuff that, as I said, some people do bits of, but they don't have to. And all it can do is, a new boss can take over and they suddenly go, let's not make loads of British content. So it's really important. And they still make that kind of stuff that brings us together as a nation, whether it's, God willing, whether it's the Euros finals and, the Lionesses being in the final again, or whether it's the, finale of Strictly or Traitors. It's kind of, it's part of who we are, I think. And so I think it's, and the other thing to mention, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but the public service broadcasters are actually a really big part of what we call the creative industry.
Yes.
That makes loads of money for this country. And people come from all over the world, not just because we've got great on-screen talent here, but also we've got fantastic, colorists, lighting directors, you name it. And that's where people learn their stuff.
And a lot of that public service training that then goes to the rest of the sector.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of connected, I guess, to news and quality media is media literacy. And in a world of, we've talked about fake news already, you can see a lot of TV style content on YouTube or on social media. It can be hard for people to discern what's real or what's not, what's comment, what's been created by AI, what's real. There's quite a push in here to invest in media literacy. So where's that? Does that come from those changes?
Yeah, it does. And I think that just a couple of stories from my own experiences. Conspiracy theorists used to be sort of people that you've never encountered, and I'm not calling mates of mine conspiracy theorists, without a doubt. But I remember after the Grenfell Tower, I was having like a few drinks with some mums and dads from around the neighbourhood, and people were saying to me, "Oh yeah, well, Sky colluded with the government to cover up the death toll," and I was like, "No, we didn't." But some of these things are becoming mainstream, and I think that it's really important that people we need to have kind of digital skills and digital literacy and citizenship to kind of understand what the world around us is doing. And that's why I think, getting the facts right is so crucial. And having news providers that are, providing trusted, accurate, impartial news, reflecting a whole range of voices and stuff, is so incredibly important. And it's not just, Ofcom does have some duties in the media literacy area, but we're very clear in our report that it's not just the work of government to do or Ofcom, but it's also the broadcasters themselves, the platforms, and making sure that we're all, it's not just kids, we do talk about the role of education, but that's obviously for Westminster and the devolved governments, but it's adults as well. People, I remember going to have my hair cut about a year ago, and the hairdresser saying to me, "Well, now Sadiq Khan's been elected into London and he was bringing in Sharia law." I said, "Where did you read that?" She goes, "Well, I don't watch the news because it's too depressing, but I saw it on my socials." So I just think it's, just getting a bit of kind of, questioning, a bit of critical thinking is important. Is
it the job of the media companies that are doing the good stuff to also fight the bad stuff, or is this really a job for the platforms?
Well, look, the online regulation world is kind of not, it's part of Ofcom, but obviously not mine. Someone else does that. I don't think I could do both. And there are some rules around that about making sure that people are not exposed to illegal content and harmful for kids and stuff. And we're making amazing strides in that, which is fantastic. Mis and disinformation was not in the Media Act, and it's not in the Online Safety Act. It's very hard. What is information and what's disinformation? So I think that it's important that we all play our part in that, and we just kind of ask a few questions of things. That picture I've just seen, is it really real? I asked my kids the other day, I've got sort of 19 and 22-year-olds, I asked them how they find out if stuff, where do they get their news from? TikTok. How do they know it's true? Well, if it's a really mad-looking story, I'll go and check on the BBC.
Yeah.
So I think getting people to think that maybe not always what you see is exactly what it purports to be is important.
Is that something that needs, again, are we asking the government for more cash to help do that?
I don't know if it's about more cash. I think it's about maybe, as I said, it's down to the Department of Education whether it's a curriculum thing. But again, the broadcasters do quite a lot already on this, and it's just kind of, reminding them and coming out to charter renewal. I think it's something that the BBC might, Tim Davies already said it, they're quite keen to sort of do a bit more on. So it's just, if you're being offered a pair of designer trainers and they're half price, little bell rings, doesn't it? If you see something on social media which looks a bit weird, then, it's just making that bell ring a little bit for people.
If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Or does it look too good to be false? Don't know. Other thing on the report, streamlining regulation to strip away any outdated and unnecessary restrictions. That sounds quite sensible, be more efficient. different people would probably have different views about what are unnecessary restrictions. Obviously, Ofcom's made some statements around things like GB News and politicians on telly, some issues in the courts with about defending those decisions. Is this about trying to change some of those rules as well?
From a sort of high point, it's sort of an overall view. It's more about really making sure that our regulation is fit for now. So the Media Act, which we're in, as I said, we're in the course of implementing, was the first kind of change in regulation for like 22 years, I think. As the world around us is changing, are things that have been put in place 20 years ago around advertising, product placement, stuff like that, are they really the right thing? And I think we also have to be cognizant about the future of TV and broadcasting, and in a world where, you know, in 10, 20 years time, are we still going to have TV licenses, or are we going to have, a bit like we have on the online world, systems and preferences or processes? So it's kind of like looking at all of it really. As far as like you'll talk about the broadcast code and a consultation we're having on the role of politicians as presenters and what we call 5.3. There's a consultation going on in that at the moment. But, you know, we're bringing in, as part of the Media Act, we're bringing in a video on demand code, and which we mirrored on the broadcast code. I'm quite keen to look at, should there just be one code for how, if you're seeing something on live, or you're seeing it on catch up, or you're seeing it on, you know, ITVX, should it be different things? So I that's the kind of thing we're talking about, but a review of everything really. Because
it's interesting that the BBC obviously has gotten some hot water about their Glastonbury coverage. Now that was on an iPlayer kind of pop-up stream channel. Am I right in thinking that is an unregulated part of the media, so it doesn't fit in with Ofcom's rules?
Not quite, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to work it out myself as well. Our powers are slightly different there. We can and are looking into sort of some of the editorial processes. We can't, unlike if it had been broadcast, then we would have been able to investigate and sanction and fine, etc. So it's slightly different to that. However, we were asked by the last government as part of the framework agreement to start regulating BBC online material, and I think that would have fitted into that.
Okay.
That arrangement hasn't started yet because there's still parties waiting for signatures and stuff. But yeah, it's a complex world, isn't it? Kind of working out, is a live stream part of the iPlayer or not part of the iPlayer? So that's why I think regulation's got to evolve with how stuff is delivered.
Yes, I mean, we talk in that point about sort of efficiency and kind of outdated regulation. And I think your boss talked about the need for the BBC particularly to respond to things slightly quicker. I'm also conscious that some of the again back to those GB News responses have taken maybe a year or so to be resolved. Knotty issues, very complex. I mean, isn't this a bit of an issue for Ofcom as well, trying to solve some of these problems and
everyone wants speed, don't they? We live in a 24-hour world now. You know, you buy something online, you want next day delivery or even same day delivery. We're a kind of instant culture. Slightly different in what my boss said about the BBC, in that it takes the BBC quite a long time to sort of come to a conclusion that most of us can see quite clearly. But with things like legislation and like sort of ruling on really complex cases, you have to take a lot of time over it because we have to consult various people, and you know, legal processes, you know, lawyers take a long time over legal processes. Not saying they do it for billing hours sake by any means, but you know, there's a lot of back and forth that goes on. But I am really keen, you know, one of the things I really want to do is to make our processes more efficient, more streamlined. We're looking at use of technology for that. We're looking at the use of AI for that. Like all organisations, how can you take them kind of slightly more monotonous, clunky things and make them more efficient?
I mean, some of this is sort of needs legislation and needs kind of colleagues in governments around the UK to do that. And media legislation, it took a long time to get to the Media Act. I mean, we're probably a few years away from anything else being added to media regulation. I mean, is that a problem for the evolution of these services and what consumers are accessing? Yeah,
I mean, so we're very cognizant with the Media Act when we're sort of writing, we're doing something like 43 different statements and codes and stuff. We're very keen to make sure that whatever we bring up can be quite flexible and doesn't need a whole load of legislation to update it. Look, legislation takes time because you have to get it right, and if it's rushed through and you get bad laws that you have to enact, then, that's in nobody's interests. This document that we launched is about it's about sparking conversations. And yes, we may require legislation to force or to insist that various things are regulated in a certain way. But I'm kind of hoping that also by starting those conversations that you can have a bit of, carrot as well as some stick.
Yes. And Ofcom's been pretty busy this year. Obviously, a lot of online safety stuff to do. I bet there's a lot more new colleagues in the building to deal with that. Also aware about the Ofcom's response to the BBC's desire to launch some new radio stations. So kind of for the first time, Ofcom did a firm no on spin-offs for Radio 2 and for 5 Live. Yeah. That's a bit of a change.
Yeah, do you know? Look, we'll unpack that a bit. We don't want to stifle the BBC in terms of innovating.
You're asking them to do quite a lot as well.
Exactly.
At the same time.
They've got to create new products. They've got to get new audiences. And so we don't want to stifle that. So we have a very sort of quite rigorous system of if the BBC, who are, a big organisation, if they come up with a proposal, we work out whether it's going to affect the market or whether it's going to damage the commercial thing. And of the 5 of those proposals, we let 3 go through because we didn't have a serious, what we call materiality impact. But we felt that the 5 Live one and the Radio 2 one were just had too much of an impact. And the competitors in that field would have really, really suffered and struggled. So that's the decision we made. And, it's all backed up by evidence and economists do models and all that kind of thing. So it was it was the first time, but it's a balance, isn't it? You want the BBC to innovate and be for everybody, but not at the expense of other people already out there.
It's quite tough because whilst they're having those conversations with you, obviously commercial operators can take those ideas and launch them themselves or get ready for them.
That they happened in this case.
You could argue that some of the radio stations launched similar things to Radio 1 anthems in the space. It's tough for the BBC. We expect a lot from that organisation. And, we're trying to do one thing on one side, and then on the other side, we say, oh no, that's too close to commercials. There's quite a lot of Radio 2 listeners that would have liked Radio 2 Retro as a spin-off service.
Yeah, well, look, as I said, we have to assess the impact on existing businesses and on the commercial market. And in this case, as I said, the evidence is all there. And in this case, we just felt that actually it would have had too much of an impact on similar kinds of services.
Okay, back to the review. So if people have an opinion, and hopefully listeners do have an opinion, how should they communicate that to you? What can they do?
That's a good point, actually. Well, our website, I've never worked for a more open organisation than Ofcom. So everything's on our website, and I'm sure there's ways that people can drop in emails or whatever on their views. I'm just really hoping that what we're going to start is a kind of a national conversation about how we preserve this thing that we love. That we've all got moments, we've all got telly moments. Whether you were remembering where you were when I'm that old, when what's his face was shot in Dallas.
JR,
that's it. Who shot JR? I remember it so vividly. Or I remember Michael Jackson releasing some video on Channel 4, and just like you remember those moments, don't you? And I just think that I want my kids to be able to remember those moments, and I just think that the sort of shared, as whether it's Eurovision or we have a conversation, don't we? And I want us to be able to carry on having that conversation.
Well, I hope we do too. My thanks to Cristina Nicolotti Squires. We're on a break now until the Edinburgh TV Festival in August, so do pop by and say hello if you're there. And don't forget our members survey. I think you've got until the 4th of August to fill that in. There are links in the show notes here or on our website at themediaclub.com. That's the place to go to sign up to our Substack to get lots of updates about what we're doing. My name's Matt Deegan. The producer was Matt Hill. It was a Rethink audio production with video support from Podcast Discovery. I'll see you in August.